Hello, FPL managers. Welcome to the FPL Optimized podcast. This is episode number 75. So it's a bit of a milestone on our way towards 100 episodes. Let's see if and when we will reach it. I am Bas, the casual manager, and my co host is Sertalp, the data scientist. This is the podcast in which we combine analytics with the good old eye test. Data or grass, or data and grass? That's the question. We are still in the midst of the very long game week 21, so instead of covering our usual content, today will be a Q&A session again. And Sertalp, for this one, I believe you've asked for help from some of your analytics friends. Is that right?
That's correct, because it felt like I'm giving like some one-sided answers time to time. Like sometimes I'm also repeating myself.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
just to have a different point of view, I asked help from 5 people. I will
Cool.
introduce them very briefly. The first one is Talha Nadeem. It is Talha _Nadeem _90 on Twitter. He's a fixture expert and he's an analytics Discord community member. You can often find him discussing fixtures like Premier League fixtures with Ben Krellin on Twitter.
Okay.
Um,
Excellent.
and Alastair, it is Ted Lasso Regen in our Discord. He's again a fixture expert. He was also a guest to our pod last season. Some of our listeners might remember. He is expert at collecting information from various sources about these fixtures, and also he has great insight about chip timings. And the third person is FPL Chase. It's FPL _Chase. He was also a guest. And he's an analytics FPL legend who stopped playing FPL this season. And the fourth person is Neil Rankin. You probably hear Neil Rankin's name every episode. He's our projection data expert. He helps with evaluating their accuracy, and then he also does some predictive analytics for his real job.
Okay.
And finally, the fifth person is Fantasy Football Trout. Again, he was a guest. It is FF_Trout on Twitter. He's one of the most colorful personalities in FPL Analytics Twitter. Wickedly smart, and also one of the experts in optimization for FPL. So they helped me with answering some of these questions in today's episode.
Oh, that's great. And thanks everyone for participating. And just to avoid any misunderstanding, so they are not joining us live, right? So you just collected their answers.
Yeah. It's too many people for us to host
Yeah, should be fun.
easily.
Maybe
So
try it the next time. Yeah.
I forwarded questions to them. I got their
Okay.
answers. So I will try to phrase their answers as much as I can. And you too.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's start then, as we probably have quite a bit to cover. And we will start with a question that you asked to Neil about the quality and accuracy of the data projections, as that's a topic we have started other pods with as well. So, yeah, tell us a bit about the discussion you had with him.
Yeah, certainly. So my question to Neil was, now that we have half season worth of data projections, it is probably a good time to ask, what would you personally use if you were playing the FPL game just with projections? Would you use a single source or a mix of them, or try to use some wisdom of the crowd? And also, what's the most interesting thing you have noticed about projections while checking their accuracy? And his answer was, what I have been struck by is how close most of the models are picking the best 45 players each game week. So, within parentheses, I will explain. So, in some of the episodes, we were using a utility measure. So, we were getting only the top 45 players from every model and then collecting their actual FPL points to see which model will be on top. So, we were thinking the difference will be huge when we were taking the experiments initially, but then we realized that the differences are not that big, actually, like between different models. So I will continue now. He says, yes, there are some differences. Models like Review, Mikal, and Fantasy Football Scout seem to be slightly better at picking players who score high, and Fix seem to be particularly good at picking goalkeepers. But
Right.
there's a lot of random variation in outcome, so I think we shouldn't read too much into this.
Okay.
Interestingly, he said, some of the best performing models over 20 game weeks are ensembles,
Hmm.
which are slightly outperforming their components. So there are
Hmm.
potential gains to using more than one model.
Hmm.
Also, potentially to sense check, combining 2 or 3 models potentially is useful, but there seems to be limited benefit to combining more than that.
Okay.
Given the relative similarities between models, I think bigger gains are not in identifying the players with the highest EV, but in the optimization and solver. And he says you're an expert on Sertalp, but also strategies around chips, navigating
Yeah.
blanks and doubles, etc.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
so I think, yeah, I agree with him about the similarities, especially FBI review and Mikael Tokvam, even though like sometimes in captaincy they have different opinions.
Yeah.
Like most of the projections, they seem to be checking out. Like there are not too many differences between them. But
Yeah.
occasionally, there are certain players who are different. And most of these
Okay.
differences, though, are coming from minute projections, I
Yeah.
should add. So sometimes, one of the projection models think that this player will play or start the game, but
Yeah.
the other model doesn't think so. So those kind of things are a little bit different. But if you have a
Yeah.
good model, I think, well, eventually the projections look very similar.
Yeah. No, this is great. And I think to your point, I mean, we have been talking about this before. So it's great to also now get the view from someone else, like Neil. And like what you said about, or what he said about the ensemble. I think we talked about that before as well,
Yeah.
that you're also taking now certain weights and you're using the ensemble because you're seeing that one is performing better. So is that then also now already kind of a conclusion from this season, or is this something you already kind of knew before?
Um, I think, well, deep down we knew about it because usually
Right.
ensembles are better than single source of
Yeah.
data.
Okay.
Usually though, because like
Yeah.
we don't know how they are building these projections, and some of the FPL models are really, I can say that they're bad. Like
Mhm.
it seems very lazy in one
Right.
way because like
Yeah.
you know that the player is probably like, for example, out for next game week, but the projection model still shows that
Right.
the player has some EV, which is weird.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but as long as you know like which players will play and then which fixtures they have, like
Yeah.
data, like people use the same input data anyway. Like we are checking underlying performances, and then we
Yeah.
are trying like checking the underlying performance of the teams, and then trying
Yeah.
to predict. So it's not surprising that the ensemble is doing
No.
better, but
Okay.
the problem is, well, obviously we are checking in hindsight.
Yeah.
So like before the game week happened, you don't know which
Yeah.
mix will give you the best solution. So
Yeah.
mixing
Okay.
it nice, but yeah,
Yeah, and
maybe
I
we
think
shouldn't
like
use.
this season is the first time that you started tracking the data, right? So now we really have some proof.
Publicly, yes, but I was also tracking last season
Okay,
privately.
got it. All right, cool. Okay, well, that's a good start to the pod. Thanks for answering that, and thanks also Neil for your contribution. For the next question, we'll switch to the topic of chip strategies because that's becoming a hot topic with some doubles that have been confirmed now for game week 25. City and Brentford are doubling, and potentially there could be a few more games even going into that double game week, for example, also for Liverpool. So yeah, many managers are looking at this now to play one of their chips, and Eric Nas Onstad was asking about that. He was saying triple captain or bench boost, what is the deal for game week 25? And I would like to add the free hit to that as well.
Hmm.
I've seen it being discussed a little bit on Twitter, and I think the reason for that is that I think especially Liverpool, so they might have a double in 25, but then they might also blank in 26. So potentially that could be a tricky one. Like if you load up on them for 25, yeah, then you might have too many of their players in 26. So that's why I think the free hit is being considered. But yeah, I guess we'll probably limit our answers by looking at the triple captain and bench boost for this one, Sertalp, or did you have any thoughts about free hit as well?
Yeah, even though free hit might sound like a good idea, I think it applies to a rather small subset of managers. We knew about Game Week 25, like the potentially, having a double and then maybe blank for some
Yeah,
teams in a while. So people had enough game weeks to prepare. So
yeah,
when it happens, there is rarely for free hit to make a big impact. Well, obviously it does when it is like a team that you don't own or like not heavily owned by anyone, so that you can
yeah,
try to get those players. Like for example, sometimes weaker teams, they get a double, but you don't want to hold them for too long. But double is nice. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean Liverpool. I mean you can have them and then bench for the blank.
yeah,
So I don't
yeah.
think it will be a too difficult for anyone. So I see a
No.
rather limited benefit from free hit. But
Okay.
for some teams, if you are well set up for it, yeah, why not? But yeah, I
Yeah.
think triple captain and bench boost usage will be more common, at least
Yeah.
among analytics players.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Maybe one thing that could uh, be of having an impact here is Salah, right? Because a
yes,
lot of people sold Salah. He's at the Africa Cup, and it might be difficult to bring him back. So if you want to have him back for the double game week 25 and you don't find another way, then maybe that could be another argument to potentially consider free hit. But of course, yeah, then after that you still have the problem because you still need to bring him back. But that could
yeah.
maybe be considered there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Talha and Alastair's answers kind of reflect that. I will just
Oh, okay.
go over them.
Yeah,
Um,
let's go to that then. Sorry, I
mhm.
didn't see that yet.
No, 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 that's okay. So Talha said, I usually don't like to be on the fence, but this one is really team dependent.
Yeah,
I'm always quite inclined to bench boost with the bench
yeah,
players also doubling. So
yeah.
Game Week 25 won't suit me, he says.
Mm,
Assuming Liverpool Luton Town does end up being added to double Game Week 25, then
yeah,
triple captain on either Haaland or Salah will be
yeah,
viable. And the caveats obviously around Haaland's expected minutes and also Salah's like potential return from
yeah.
AFCON.
Right.
Bench boost could be viable if you have assets from Newcastle, Tottenham, Brighton, or Aston Villa going into 25, but I wouldn't force into bench boost by taking several hits unless you are using it as a building block to blank game week 29 players, he
Okay.
said. And I also asked the same question to Alastair, and he said, assuming Liverpool and Luton Town double in the Game Week 25, as has been widely projected and discussed, the most
Yeah,
popular chip used in Game Week 25 will be Triple Captain.
yeah.
People like to use their Triple Captain chips first, and yeah, I agree. And if Salah
Okay.
has typically higher expected minutes for both games, his EV will likely be more than 14. And if
Hmm.
Haaland is back to having 80 plus minutes, his expected value will be over 12 also. So both
Hmm.
will be clear the 12 EV threshold we often use for triple captain as a chip.
Okay.
However, bench boost is certainly worth evaluating as an alternative, he says, and he says he's strongly considering it himself too.
Okay. All right.
For teams with more than like five double game 25 players and only one or fewer Chelsea players already in their current squads, um, and within parentheses it says Chelsea play Manchester City away in game week 25, so will
Yeah.
be tough to bench boost with it.
Yeah.
One may be able to organically build into bench boost 25 with an EV of 17 plus, which is
Okay.
attractive compared to benchmarks. Um, by using
Right.
one free transfer to move one backup goalkeeper to Kaminsky or Flaken, and otherwise pretty normal flexible moves.
Yeah.
Triple captain could be played later in the season. So this part is important. So he says triple captain could be played later in the season. While not certain, it strikes me as likely there will be another triple captain opportunity with an EV higher than 12. And there is a risk that later bench boost strategies will prove disappointing or costly in terms of transfers this season, given the likely significant gap in time between second wildcard and the likeliest big double game week, which will happen in game week
Uh,
37.
Okay.
Ooh, that was a long answer.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to digest there. Right.
Yeah, so I kind of agree. I mean, it depends on whether Salah is back or not. But if he's back, then obviously triple captain
Yeah.
will be great to use it. But yeah,
Yeah.
um, again, bench
No, I
boost.
like what Alastair is saying there. I mean, again, he's saying a lot, but so yeah, to the point made that typically you want to triple captain someone if there is at least an EV of 12 or more.
Yeah.
And he's saying that's probably the case now, but that might also be the case later. So there is an
Hmm.
argument to save your triple captainship. And with the bench boost, yeah, typically we want to wildcard and then bench boost the week after in a double game week. And he says that this season that's quite difficult to do, as probably the biggest double game week will only be in game week 37,
Yes, that's
and
correct.
likely, I guess, will wildcard more around game week 30, game week 31. I guess most people.
Yeah, Alastair
Um,
usually uses a different chip strategy than most people
okay.
do. He spends
Yeah.
really like time on this, and then he comes up
Yeah.
with like interesting answers. So I
Yeah.
I kind of like asked him as a follow up question. I
Yeah.
asked, what chip strategy do you think will end up being optimal for like massive data or playing rank? Obviously, there are lots of unknowns, but for people who are not bothered enough to go into details, would you be willing to keep your bench boost or triple captain chip for later? And as a follow up, what game week should we be optimizing our teams until? I asked this question, by the way, because the way we are doing optimization, we are just getting 12 game week horizon or 8 game week, depending on how you look at it, and we are optimizing over it. But if you include
Yeah.
that, then it will way past the ideal time to wildcard. So I was kind of
Yeah.
asking what we should be using as a dead end. I
Okay.
said obviously we will use wildcard 2 before other chips, probably. So would
Yeah.
you solve problem with maximum horizon, or would you use any game week in this horizon as a soft dead end game week? And Alistair said, for the latter question, the latest wildcard I have seen suggested as a possibly optimal here is wildcard 33.
Okay.
So I think I would cut the horizon to 11. Wildcard 36 and bench boost 37 is theoretically possible, but I can't see
Mhm.
if being optimal given how late that will be and tricky periods we need to navigate between here and then.
Yeah.
Answering the first question is extremely hard with little definitive cup info as we have currently, but from my
Right.
limited experience, hindsight optimal chip strategies often look a bit wacky and involve wildcarding in a blank, but after the point where we have pretty definite double game week information, so if forced to guess right now, I would go something weird and wonderful like bench boost 25, triple captain 28 on Solanke, assuming Sheffield United and Luton down double game week for Bournemouth,
Okay. Yeah.
wildcard 29, and free hit 34.
Oh wow.
Most common strategy amongst engaged managers will likely be triple captain 25, wildcard
Right.
31, free hit 34, and bench boost 37. I
Right.
think in part because Ben Crellin, Press, and James all seem to be leaning in that direction currently, and they
Yeah.
are very key chip strategy influencers.
Right.
But, he added, most common chip strategy rarely fares poorly in MD terms because they are thoughtful, but that doesn't necessarily make it the very best, in my opinion, he said. So,
Hmm.
some kind of like a controversial comment at the end.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting all of this because of course there's also something you can consider, like what are, let's say, some of the top content creators recommending, and that's why you could maybe expect the field to do that, and maybe you can have an edge if you do something else. Of course, again, like we talked in the past, there's always the balance between risk and reward. But if we take the learning here from Alistair saying that hindsight learnings here from previous season is always that the optimal chip strategy was something that maybe not many people expected. So if you consider it like this, then maybe we should think a bit out of the box this time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, then, yeah, this chip strategy, the common chip strategy, we can call it like 25 triple captain, 31 wildcard, pre-hit
Yeah,
34, and then bench boost 37. Well, if you do that, well, and assuming that you will stick to the template for most of your picks for wildcard and free hit,
yeah,
then there's a limited opportunity for improving your rank. I mean, your
right.
rank will improve because people
Yeah,
have been using their chips very early, so you will pass those
right.
people. And then
Yeah,
some people will make poor choices, you will pass those people too. But
yeah,
among the people who are using the same chip strategy,
yeah,
then yeah, your chance gets lower. So I kind of see
yeah,
the merit in going with a different chip strategy. So like I was talking about differential, and you can differentiate your chip strategy and make a big
right.
impact on your
Yeah, no,
season.
that's a good point. Yeah,
Because like I have seen in last seasons that, like for example in analytics league, most of the people use the same chip strategy. Like there's a big correlation. But
yeah,
if you check the top 100 at the end of the season, they come up with really interesting chip strategies. Like you would think
yeah,
that it wouldn't work, but they got lucky somehow.
yeah. No,
Um,
that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
why
mean,
they're top 100. Yeah,
like even in the mini league now, like our work mini league and SAS mini
yeah,
league, if I use the same chip in the same game week with the other like people
yeah.
in the league, it makes me upset. Like I want to,
You want to be
make more
different.
points on them. Yeah.
Yeah, but even the level we're thinking about it, like I think also Alastair said, he says it's a common strategy amongst engaged managers, but I would say the group of engaged managers, yeah, it's
It's
quite
really
a big group,
strong.
but
Yes.
it's still let's say a small part of the whole FPL community. So I think even if you follow that, let's say, common strategy, you should gain rank, of course, versus, let's say, the casual or the less engaged managers. But if you
Yeah.
really want to stand out
So
and maybe win the game, then you might have to do something else.
I mean, for example, at my rank, like I think my
Yeah,
season is going really well so far.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I will be inclined to
right,
use this common chip strategy because like I'm not
right,
taking any unnecessary risk. I'm just hoping
yeah,
that some of the minor differentials I have will give
yeah,
me a boost to
yeah,
like improve my rank, maybe to enter top
yeah,
10K. But if I was quite far and then I didn't see any like other way to improve my rank. I think we also have a
yeah,
question on this, but
yeah.
like a
That's
different chip
true.
strategy would be interesting.
But even for you, I mean, if your objective is to still be, let's say, top 1K or top 500, then you might also have to do something else, right? So it's also, even at your rank, a decision of, yeah, like, do you want to play defensive and kind of, are you happy where you are, or do you still want to attack it?
So triple captain Solanke, you are saying? Okay.
No, I don't
No,
know,
no,
but
no, I'm kidding. But I
no,
like
yeah,
the idea. It's such a good
yeah,
double game week, like Sheffield United and Luton Town potentially.
yeah, and both at home, if I am looking at it here correctly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if that's confirmed. So yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah, and I'm just looking at that game week 25 doubles again. So I think for City, they play against Chelsea and Brentford at home. And for Liverpool, it's then Brentford away, Luton at home. So yeah, City two home games. Maybe not the easiest opponents, but yeah, City at home. If Haaland is in form, of course, it's a great opportunity to go with the triple captain chip on him. But he hasn't played yet, so I think it's still a question mark. Let's see what will happen during the next game weeks.
Yeah.
And then for Liverpool, Brentford away, Luton at home. That's quite a good combination as well. Of course, especially the home game against Luton.
Mm-hmm.
But also on that one, the candidate would be Salah. Let's see how he performs in the Africa Cup. When will he come back? In what type of form will he come back? We still remember the last Africa Cup, and I think some people are talking about that, right? Salah came back and he didn't do much after the Africa Cup,
So
so
it's funny because
that
like
makes it a bit difficult.
I was talking to my wife about it, and that was the season I think she was playing FPL.
All right,
But
yeah,
like she asked me like why I don't have Salah in my team, and I said he's on like African Cup of Nations, and she said, "Oh no!" And
oh
then yeah,
yeah,
even she knows about it. So
do you remember
yeah,
that?
she remembers it.
That's
It
cool.
was
Yeah,
funny.
all right. But yeah, he might be back sooner, maybe. Yeah, because I think the first game they almost lost it. They just
Five,
equalized in the last
yeah.
minute. So I don't know. I'm not really following the Africa Cup, so I don't know how how the team is looking. But yeah, we should keep an eye on that, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great discussion. Yeah, we've been talking quite a lot now about triple captaincy, free hit, bench boost, and using solvers to find optimal strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And as we also mentioned, there are certain EV thresholds that then are typically being considered. We covered this in the previous podcast as well. But let's dive again a little bit deeper into this one because we also had a question on it from Football Metrics FPL.
Yeah. Football Metrics FPL asks this question. There are some universal constants in the FPL analytics community, like wildcard is worth 20 EV, free hit
Hmm.
is worth 15 EV, and bench boot is worth 12 EV, and also money in the bank is 0.3 per million per game week. Some of these were calculated a while ago when analytics was in its infancy. Do these values still apply, or is there room for an update?
Yeah.
And so I forwarded this question to Trout actually because like I had an idea, but I wasn't really sure. Trout spent more time on especially investigating money in the bank aspect. So I
Okay.
will just read his answer.
Yeah.
He says, I will completely reject any notion that 0.3 points per 1 million in the bank is a global constant. It is totally variable, changing all the time. Sometimes it's a massive overestimate and sometimes an underestimate. This season I have measured it 3 times and it's taken the following values. In game week 2 it was 0.3. In game week 3 it was 0.35. And in game week 20 it's 0.29.
Okay.
In other seasons, it's ranged all the way from 0.2 to 0.45 and gone from zero point 0.2 to 0.35 in the same season. It
Okay.
requires constant measurement and observation over a long period of time to understand and predict. Yeah, essentially, I agree that the value in the bank, the value of having money in the bank, it changes depending on what are the potential moves, what are the potential upgrades, what does the field look like, and if there's any uncertainty. And the second answer, I don't share the instinct that they are much less for optimal play, or at least the effect is quite marginal and the value is quite similar for all good teams. Playing optimally should really imply playing chips optimally too. Very often
Yeah.
having a strong team in a non-free hit game week implies that your non-free hit team in a free hit game week is relatively weak due to the fact that they are often used to navigate through teams that have both blank game weeks and double game weeks. Difficult concept to explain though. In his final tweet, yes, playing wildcard at a time when the team is optimal is obviously gonna be less effective. These values describe what most value the wildcard is likely to hold in a normal half season, given that our teams are not likely to remain optimal, rather than the value we might expect at any given time. We have had half seasons where wildcard has been worth less than 10 points at most, and half seasons where it has been worth more than 35 points. For what it's worth, I think 20 points is a slight overestimate for first wildcards. And he
Right.
said, I'd like to use 16 or 18 these days. And it's an
Mm.
underestimate for second wildcard. Although wildcard 2 is difficult to view in isolation, it's usually paired with bench boost to product something better than the sum of an isolated wildcard and isolated
Right.
bench boost. And he finally says, I would like to add that although FPL Analytics was in its relative infancy back when we drafted values like these, very little progress has been made on questions about chip value before or since. Only thing that is different now is that we have few seasons to mull on it.
Okay.
Again, a long answer, but yeah.
Yeah.
So some of these values, I mean, it's just like rule of thumb, but they do not necessarily indicate a threshold that you need to use your chips if they're over this. It depends on the field. Like if we can have the projections until game week 38, like suppose we know all the doubles and then blanks, then chips doesn't have a value. Like you can use them whenever they're optimal. you don't need to put a threshold to them. And then if you optimize it, you can see which game week they will be optimal. The problem
Yeah.
is we don't know how the blanks and doubles will fall,
Right.
and that changes. So it should be really what you are expecting from the season. And that's why it's
Okay.
kind of important to follow the experts like, Ben Krellin, Talha,
Yeah.
Alastair, because they give more insight about what the potential blanks and doubles will be. So you
Yeah.
can maybe like adjust your expectations. For
Yeah.
example, we talked about, potential doubles. But yeah.
Okay. Wow. But yeah, we have some really smart people in the community. I think that's one of the conclusions from this podcast.
Yeah.
Looking at the
Very
answers.
smart. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Trout. Let's see. What's the next
Oh,
question?
I have a question to you actually.
Okay.
Um, so Brentford lost in the cup, and it means they won't black in game week 29, and they will have
Mhm.
more fixtures between game week 25 to game week 29 than other teams.
Oh.
But they're very difficult fixtures. So do you consider players like Tony? Because I feel like there's a chance he will be popular among FPL managers now that he's back.
Yeah, and I think especially for this game week, yeah, they have a attractive fixture against Nottingham
Mm-hmm.
coming weekend. I think I saw some people even captaining him, so that's quite a bold move. Yeah, we talked about it a little bit last week. I see the appeal of Tony because, of course, we still know him as a top goal scorer, and yeah, Brentford. We know they have a good team. I think they're struggling now a little bit, especially also because Mbuemo has been out, so they lost some attacking power. But with Tony, you know, they will get some of that back, of course. But yeah, personally, I'm not considering it for a few reasons. One is that he just didn't play for a long time, even though I'm sure he trained a lot. He must be super fit, but it's not the same. I think he misses that kind of game rhythm. But again, he might score 2 or 3 goals against Nottingham, and then people will probably jump on it. But yeah, I'll rather just wait and see. Um, but I'm also looking, let's say, beyond Nottingham because I think that first game looks good. After that, it gets tougher. Just looking at it here, they play against Tottenham in game week 22. Then they play against City. Then again, they play against Wolves. Then Liverpool. Then there is West Ham, Chelsea, Arsenal. So quite some tough fixtures in there. So
Yeah,
from that
it's really tough.
perspective, Brentford doesn't look too appealing to me. And then the third point I'm also considering is that there are just a lot of alternatives, right? Even if you consider it as a third attacker or as a fifth midfielder, there are a lot of different people we can bet on. For example, I like Isaac at the moment as a shout, even though
Mm-hmm.
Wilson might be fit as well. But Isaac scores a lot of goals, plays for a good team. They have good fixtures coming up. So if I would be taking a bet, I think I would be rather taking it on Isaac than on Tony.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, some people want to jump on him early, try to get some advantage. I won't be doing it, but how are you thinking about it, Sertal?
Yeah, I agree. And also the fact that they're having really difficult fixtures. I mean,
Yeah,
Liverpool, Manchester City, Arsenal, they all
yeah,
have good defense.
yeah,
So the clean sheet probability will be high.
yeah,
So I don't immediately see him as an option, but potentially, maybe in
yeah,
the watch list. Like he might end
definitely.
up being optimal, but I doubt
Yeah,
it. And especially for my team, I have other stuff that I had to replace.
yeah,
So we will see
yeah.
if it is confirmed.
Yeah,
Then
maybe beyond game week 28, once they add the tough fixtures, and maybe if Mbuemo is back, then of
yeah,
course, Mbuemo and Tony in the same team, that will be really interesting.
yeah,
So yeah, let's monitor it. I'm sure we'll come back on it here in this podcast and future
yeah.
episodes.
Hmm.
All right, let's take another question for you, Sir Tom, and I think this one is one you will really like, as I know that one of the reasons for you to, for example, do this podcast is that you're trying to increase the interest of people in analytics in general. And Slain LRF was asking about it. The question is, what are some of the best websites for people to look at if they want to become better fantasy analytics players? What's your recommendation here?
Well, first of all, great question. We get this question a lot, so I will give an extended answer this time around. In the world of FPL analytics, there are several approaches, each suited to different levels of engagement and expertise. So it's probably not a perfect analogy, but think of it as deciding how you enjoy your pizza from ready-made to homemade. So there are several degrees I will explain. The first one is ready-made. So for those like seeking straightforward, ready-to-use tools, like for example, FPL Review is your go-to tool. So it offers projections and at the same time automation tools to generate a plan. So it's perfect for like time efficient analysis if you don't want to spend too much time on it. And the second one is customize. So you can customize your pizza. So if you prefer tweaking these projections using resources from FPL Review or Mikkel Tokvam and adding your personal touch, then this approach is for you. So what you can do is adjusting expected minutes based on which you believe who will play in the game, or banning certain players or banning certain teams, maybe if you think they are not, a consideration, or doing something even more fancy, like banning, tripling from teams, or maybe banning crossplays. So it is more time consuming, but highly personalized. So FPL Review also offers some control for these, like banning players and such, but you can also do even more by downloading the Python solver, and it gives you more granular control over this optimization process. But again, this is more time consuming. You need to spend some time to customize your pizza. The third one is imitative. So you don't actually order a pizza, you don't customize it, but you eat other people's pizza. And so there are players who prefer to follow footsteps of the established analytical managers. So it's a small minority, but essentially, if you keep talking with other analytics managers, learn what they are doing, like when they are wildcarding, or which players they are considering, and if you learn about their plans, it could help you play more analytically. So you don't need to invest too much time. You can keep your ways as an eye test manager, for example, Bas. But if you keep talking with an analytical manager, and then if you try to implement some of those strategies, then you are getting closer to playing analytically, one way or another.
So you mean with this one, it's not really a tool, but you can follow, let's say, analytical managers, for example, via Twitter or X.
Twitter, and I will talk about it at the end, but Discord, our analytics Discord is a great resource for it. And then the fourth type is hybrid. And it is similar to like buying your dough ready, but then adding your own ingredients.
Your toppings.
Yeah, so exactly, toppings. So at this point, it is worth mentioning that for analytical play, you need at least two pieces. The first one is projections. The second one is solving process, like solver, optimization, or algorithm. So then in this hybrid method, you can either get ready-made projections and then combine with your own developed algorithm, or you can generate your own projections and use a ready-made solver, like my Python solver. So Spiros Voloxis, I hope I don't butcher his name, is a very good example in this category. He generates his own projections, but he's using my Python solver to optimize it. And he's doing pretty well, and people seem to be having an interest in that. And the fifth one is do it yourself from scratch. It's like all homemade. So this is the most challenging yet most rewarding path. First of all, you learn a lot, but you need to gather your own data, create your projections, and develop your own solver or algorithm. There are websites like fbref.com, which provide raw data. Also, fantasy websites like Fantasy Football Scout, Hub, they also share Opta data. You can even buy Opta data directly from Opta, and then you can generate your own projections and use your own solver. That should teach you how to do like predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, all that, and develop a decision support tool for yourself. And for people who are interested, I have a tutorial on YouTube for creating a mixed integer linear optimization solver if you want to
Okay.
create one from scratch. And
Yeah.
people have been using those tutorials to also develop solvers for other fantasy games, I heard. But whichever path you choose, I urge you to join our analytics Discord community. I think that's the best website you can actually, that can help you. And
Okay.
hang out with people who are also passionate about being a fantasy analytics manager, not only for FPL but also for other
Right.
fantasy games like Sky, Fan Team. We
Mhm.
have people in from various backgrounds, from people who are just starting to use projections, all the way to people with graduate degrees in quantitative fields. So again, it's a long
Right.
and mixed answer, but I hope it helps.
No, this is super valuable, and we should document it somewhere so people can look back at it. I think
Yeah.
some really useful resources. Yeah. And for the Discord, anyone can join it, or are you guys being selective?
No, anyone can join it. I can share a link in my Twitter,
Okay.
or FPL
All
optimized
right.
Twitter now.
We'll do that. Great. Okay. So yeah, we'll have two more questions, I think. So one is from Willie FPL. Thank you, Willie. And Willie was asking, with a rank outside the top 2 million, what upside moves would you prioritize? And this is a question I can relate to be honest. I have to admit, I'm still also around that 2 million ranking, even though mid game week, now I'm a little bit below it. So I hope it
You
will
can
be
see.
like this, but still a few games to go. But yeah, I think to Willie's point, this is probably not where we expected to be at the start of the season, where we're spending quite some time on this. We want to do as well as possible. So what can we still do to increase our rank? And yeah, what my approach will be. So I'll start. Then Sertalp, you can comment on it.
Sure.
I will just focus on picking the best players, and what I mean with that is that I will not think too much about who are the differentials, but I will focus first on who are the best players as let's say the essential question, because I think from my point of view, yeah, we cannot win FPL anymore. That's for sure. But on the other hand, we still have 16 game weeks to play, so that's
Mm-hmm.
still quite a lot, and I think there's still a lot that can be done in that amount of time. And I think if you go too crazy now and only go for differentials, then yeah, you could drop even further. So again, it depends a bit on how much risk you want to take. For me, I'll keep focusing, let's say, on the long game. There are certainly managers that lost interest, that are inactive or, um, yeah, just not paying attention anymore. So I think just by making the right picks, we can already gain rank automatically, I hope. And the second point is what we discussed earlier. Let's also focus on the chip strategy, right?
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who don't take it that seriously, and maybe they already used a triple captain or they already used a bench boost. Most of us, let's say the engaged managers, we still have our chips available. So I think there is still a lot of rank we can gain also with that one. And yeah, whether then you go for, let's say, the common strategy, or you try to come up with something creative, guess it doesn't matter too much. There is just whatever you do with the chip still in hand, there is still also rank we can gain with that. So I will certainly be planning for that, for my second wild card, triple captain, bench boost, free hit, and then hopefully those will work out. So that's a bit what I'm planning to do. Nothing, no rocket science, but just trying to yeah, go for, yeah, as I said, right, the right players, and think about my chip strategy, and hopefully I can gain some rank like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other recommendations, Sertop?
No, well, not other recommendation, but I agree with what you said. Like, as our
Okay.
earlier examples show, chip timings will be very critical.
Yeah.
Almost 1 million people use their second wildcard already. So there's a
Right.
great potential to rise in the ranks for people who are still holding it towards the final quarter of the season.
Yeah.
Well, doubles and blanks will be really fun to navigate around. You don't need to do anything crazy, as you mentioned. But for
No.
mini leagues, you can consider captaining the player your rival doesn't have, or maybe less likely to captain if the projections are close.
Yeah.
Because in limited time games like FPL, towards the end, if you are trailing, you need to increase the risk factor a little bit. Yes, you can fall
Yeah.
behind, but it's maybe it's your only chance to make it
Yeah.
up. But doing it too early is not good. And then if your rank doesn't improve in a few game weeks, then well, then you can consider going broke with more
Yeah.
differentials, sacrificing EV for lower owned players and a captaincy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so when you play, especially your wildcard towards game week 31 ish.
Yeah. Okay, great. So, Willie, I hope you find that helpful and good luck with climbing the ranks. We'll be following you, that's for sure.
Hmm.
All right. So, we talked a lot in this podcast today, and we took FPL very seriously again. So, I think to counterbalance that a little bit, we'll end with the question that you asked to Chase, because Chase is actually a manager who was very engaged, but then stopped playing. So let's see what his perspective now is on the game, Sertalp.
Yeah. I asked him, how do you feel mentally now that you haven't played at least half season? Do you have any intention of coming back? Is it better to be outside of FPL discussions now, or do you miss it? And he said, I do miss being involved in more technical debates around FPL. I do miss running Solver, and I
Yeah.
miss planning aspect of it for sure. However, the freed headspace I had this half season has been very rewarding. I'm definitely a lot more chilled over the weekends. Plus, I
All
don't get
right.
worked up by my FPL timeline on X anymore. Quite honestly, I don't think I will be playing again. When you take a step back and recognize the imbalance between effort spent and rewards, it is hard to see me getting into it again. But of course, never say never.
Yeah. That's an interesting perspective, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So, any reflection from you on this?
Well, I'm jealous of him actually stop playing because, like, well, let's confess, like, we all time to time think about it. Like, we get angry and then we're like, why am I playing this game? I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
playing. But then it's kind of like an addiction. Um,
Yeah.
well, for most people, it gives a good opportunity to connect with other people. Like,
Yeah.
I made lots of friends like over playing
Yep.
FPL, like more than in
Yeah.
recent years, like more than anything, I guess, anything else from my other hobbies. So from that perspective, like I don't see it as detrimental, like overall, but the game itself is so like exhausting. Like it's
Yeah.
like you need to think about it, and over the weekend, sometimes like your happiness is tied to how your like fantasy players will perform.
Right.
Like and sometimes also highs are not that high, but the lows are really low. Like when
Yeah.
you get unlucky. From that perspective, I think the optimal will be playing this game enough to make some friends and also maybe, keep getting involved with the community one way or another, but actually stop playing FPL at one point. I think. I
Yeah.
know that people have been playing fantasy games more than, I don't know, like maybe 20 years, and they are still
Yeah.
doing it. When I see
Right.
them, I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not as bad as it sounds, but for me
Yeah.
personally, I'm a very emotional person,
Yeah.
so that's why I want to do what Chase did at one point.
Yeah.
Maybe after I win the FPL. I will definitely quit playing after
Oh, after you win. All right. Okay. Well,
that.
that could take a while. No, but I have a bit the same reflection. I mean, I guess it's just about not taking it too seriously, but it's quite difficult, of course, if you spend time on it and you try to do well. I think it's about managing maybe the frustration, especially as you what you said, managing those kind of lows, kind of
Hmm.
accept the variance and accept that you made probably the right decision, but it's not always working out. But it's fun when it works, but it can also, to your point, it can also be quite stressful, as we all know. Like, take last week, like I captained Salah, and Salah was playing in the final game, and then you're sitting there the whole weekend. All the other players already scored quite some points, and you need to wait for your captain to play,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
need to hope that he will deliver, and then he misses a penalty. And then
It
in the end
happens.
he still scores two goals. So that probably sums it up, right? That roller
True.
coaster. Or also
It's
this
a
game
roller
week,
coaster. You're right.
yeah, like this game week I put my armband on Palmer. We talked about that a lot. He played
Hmm.
one of the first games, so if he doesn't score, then you feel maybe quite bad for the rest of the week. In this case he did score, so now I'm feeling quite happy. So it's really about balancing those emotions and yeah. And to your point, focus on the positives, right? We're having all these nice discussions. We're meeting a lot of nice and interesting people. We're
Hmm.
learning. I think that's also definitely, I think, the objective of what we're trying to do here. Let's also, learn, benefiting from the analytics and from the optimization. So yeah, let's focus on the positives.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you summarized
That's
it
the
pretty well. I
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
that's the conclusion. All right, but yeah, no, it's good. It's good to sometimes again bring in Chase, right, to balance it. I think
Yeah.
that's important. We could do that more often.
We will
Chase,
turn
if
this
you're
into an
listening.
anti FPL podcast. How
Let's-
to quit
yeah,
FPL addiction.
yeah, probably. Okay, cool. All right, I think that's it for today.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. Well, as mentioned, everyone, so we'll leave our usual content for next week once the game week is over. And that includes also then an update about our mini league. This was FPL Optimized Podcast, episode number 75. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of game week 21, and we will be back with another episode next week to prepare for game week 22. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you'll get notified when the next episode is released. And do follow us on X. For Sertalp, it's at Sertalp Bilal. And for me, it's at Belfi BB. And you can also find us on YouTube.
And until next time, stay curious and stay analytical. Goodbye.
Goodbye.